So right now we're in this series where we are looking at what it is to be part of God's kingdom, the kingdom way of life. And it's really an invitation into a way of life that runs counter to so much of what we see and what we experience in the world around us. Because when you enter into life with God, you're entering into life as it was meant to be lived. I don't spend a whole lot of time on social media, thank goodness. Not my favorite place to be, but every once in a while I get on there. And it's sort of interesting to me what evidently the algorithms of my feed think about me. And we don't always think about this, but the feed that you're getting is somehow based on what it thinks you want or what you're looking for or who you are, and evidently it thinks that I'm a 75-year-old woman. I don't know why, I can't explain it, but I just see some of these ads and I'm like, I don't know how I got this. And I saw one this week that was clearly just the whole feel of it. It was just not for someone my age or maybe my gender, I don't know. But it was about financial security. And they were talking about like in retirement, and they were talking about, this was the tagline, no one is looking out for you but you. And I thought, wow, that's foreboding, isn't it? No one is looking out for you but you. And I thought about that implication. And just the whole feel of the ad was not just that no one's paying attention for you, although that's true, but they were trying to say like, there's actually like people out there trying to harm you, so you can't trust anybody. Like you don't know who it might be. Like no one's looking out for you, but also there is no one out there that you can trust except for them for a monthly fee. And I immediately thought, not on your life. I will never trust you. And I thought, isn't that interesting? That we're at this time right now where when someone tells you to trust them, that's usually your first clue that they are not to be trusted. And I just thought, like, why is that? Like, what is it about where we are as a society or this time in civilization where when someone says, trust me, my gut instinct is immediately skepticism or suspicion? Like, why does it just seem like no one is safe? Why does it feel like there's no one who's really looking out for us and no one should be trusted? And it struck me that it didn't seem like it was always this way. I remember, and I'm way older than some of you, and I'm younger than some of you. But I remember when I was very young, and my mom would turn on the nightly news with Peter Jennings. Some of you know who Peter Jennings is. Some of you have no idea who I'm talking about. But Peter Jennings on the nightly news, and he would fill you in like half an hour on literally everything you needed to know about the world. It was amazing. And we believed him. I mean, how naive were we, right? We believed somebody on television telling us something about the world. But we did. We sat there like, oh, this is so interesting. We're believing this person. See, today we're sophisticated, we're enlightened, we know better. We don't believe anybody ever about anything. And what we've learned is that no one's to be trusted. You can't trust anyone. Everyone's just out for themselves. What's so interesting about this kind and this level of distrust is that it can become a self-perpetuating reality. That when we believe that everyone's only looking out for themselves, then we assume we have to do the same. And pretty soon it's true. And when we believe that other people, not only are they only looking out for themselves, but they are looking to take advantage of us, and they're willing to break their commitments or go back on their word or manipulate, the fine print, if they're willing to take advantage of us that way, then we need to be willing to play the same games. We need to always be making sure that we can get out of whatever our commitments are. We need to have exit strategies. We need to be willing to break some of our promises because otherwise we're the schmucks. Like we're the ones who will be taken advantage of. So we need to play the same game that everybody else is playing. And pretty soon that distrust becomes rampant. And we are to a point now where it just seems as though society is ready to collapse in on itself under the collective weight of our distrust for one another. And the temptation is to say, well, it's those people. Like they have to become more trustworthy and then we'll trust them. But the reality is if we want to begin to reverse this culture of distrust, reverse this trend, we can't wait for someone else to become trustworthy. It actually has to become part of who we are. We have to become trustworthy. We have to be people who keep our word. We have to be people who can be counted on in order to inject confidence into the relationships of our lives to change the culture around us. In Jesus' Sermon on the Mount that we've been looking at the last few weeks, he is going to give us a few teachings where they're all centered around, they're all somehow connected to this underlying issue of trust. Because without trust, relationships, which are the very fabric of society when you get down to it, relationships begin to unravel. And Jesus, he begins with the most fundamental human relationship of all. He begins with marriage. And so in Matthew 5:27, he says, "You have heard that it was said, 'Do not commit adultery.' But I tell you that anyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart." And in the ancient world, laws about marriage and adultery were biased towards men. It was a patriarchal society. And so all of the laws, all of it favored men. It was in their favor and to their advantage. And so in ancient Near Eastern cultures, most societies believed that men, even married men, could sleep with whoever they wanted so long as she wasn't married. Because if she's married, because women were viewed mostly as property, she belonged to someone else. And so if you're a married man, you can sleep with whoever you want, no problem. Now, a married woman, absolutely not. You can't do that. It doesn't work both ways. But a married man, you can sleep with whoever you want as long as she's not married, because otherwise you're taking someone else's property. And even in Judaism, there were all sorts of theological and legal debates about what constituted adultery. Like, what is it really? What is it not? But see, Jesus, he trumps all of it. He blows them all out of the water. He says, you can have your little debates, little legal debates about this isn't. He says, let me just get right down to it. Lust. To even desire someone sexually who's not your spouse, that is to break your marriage vows. That is to betray the sacred trust of marriage. And this is such a radical statement, which is what Jesus always does, isn't it? He always raises the bar. He says, it's not about keeping the rules, it's about your heart. This is such a radical statement because he's connecting infidelity not just with your actions, but with your heart, with what you desire. And what Jesus is not saying, by the way, he's not saying that you can't look at someone of the opposite sex or work with somebody of the opposite sex or spend time with them or have conversations. He's not even saying that you shouldn't find someone else attractive. That's not what he's saying. Carrie and I, we have some friends, this couple. They are so beautiful. It's none of you. Some of you are like, is it me? No. They're so beautiful. They're so attractive. And if Carrie was to say, dude, he's not really that attractive, I'd be like, are you crazy? Have you seen his hair? He's gorgeous. Like, even I know he's gorgeous, right? See, it's not wrong to say, well, that person's attractive, right? But when you begin to imagine them and fantasize them, and even if you had the opportunity to plot how you could be with them alone and take it a few steps too far, he says, man, you're already off the reservation, right? Your heart has already gone too far. You've already sinned. You've broken the sacred trust of marriage. Let me just speak to the guys for a second here, because I'm a guy, and here's what I'll tell you, guys. If you have wandering eyes, right? If you're looking at other women, maybe it's one woman in particular, maybe it's other women, maybe it's a lot of women, and you're looking at them in that way, can I tell you that your wife will know? Because it will change the way that you look at her. And we live in a world right now where, as I know you're all aware, pornography is such an epidemic. And I wish I could say it was just out there, but it is in here, in the church. And what I can tell you, as I've talked with couples and I've experienced and just walking with couples through some of this, and this is my experience. I know I'm speaking in some generalities here. And I know that pornography has become an epidemic among women as well as men. So this is so rampant, okay? But within a marriage, when pornography becomes part of a marriage and is in that relationship, understand that it affects men and women differently. And for women, part of what is so devastating about your husband looking at pornography is that it erodes the trust you have between you. And this is what Jesus is saying, that just as a physical affair violates the sacred trust, you're breaking your vows when you cheat on your spouse, So is fantasizing about someone else. So is lusting after somebody else. So is looking at somebody and wishing you could be with them. And which is why Jesus says, do whatever it takes to protect that trust. Do whatever it takes to protect your marriage and to protect your soul. Look at what it says in verse 29. If your right eye, in other words, that eye that's looking where it should not be looking, that eye that you're lusting after somebody else with, if that eye causes you to sin, gouge it out and throw it away. It is better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to be thrown into hell. And if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off and throw it away. It is better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to go into hell. In the early centuries of the church after Jesus, there was very few theologians who took this very literally and decided that they were going to begin cutting off parts of themselves to keep themselves from sinning. By the way, if someone tells you they take the Bible really literally, just ask them which parts. This is not a part you want to take literally. If you take this literally, there's going to be a lot less of you very quickly. Jesus is not saying you should actually gouge out your eye or cut off your hand. What he's saying here is that we should not take sin lightly. My two oldest boys are 12 and 14, and in the last year or so, we've started watching more movies that I enjoy together. And it made me think, though, about the movies that I watched growing up. And as I thought back, I realized, I was like, man, it'd be great to watch this movie for them. I realized that I watched so many rated R movies when I was their age. And it's not because my parents were really lax. It's because there was such a thing back then as edited for TV. So I watched all these rated R movies that were completely inappropriate for someone my age, but I didn't actually see the whole movie. I saw something appropriate for me. And it's funny because later I watched them, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so gory, I had no idea. But this is how I could get away with watching Chuck Norris and Wesley Snipes and Arnold Schwarzenegger, because they were edited for TV. But my favorite movie at that time was The Untouchables. Love The Untouchables. Anybody love The Untouchables? Yeah, there we are. Man, what a good movie. And one of my favorite scenes is when Kevin Costner, who's playing Elliot Ness, the Treasury officer, he goes to Sean Connery and says, will you help me get Al Capone? He wants to arrest Al Capone, and Sean Connery, his response is so classic. He says, what are you prepared to do? How far are you willing to go to get Al Capone? And see, the question that Jesus is challenging us with, what are you prepared to do to avoid sin? How seriously are you really taking your sin? How far are you willing to go to protect your marriage? How far are you willing to go to break that addiction, to fight that sin in your life? How far are you willing to go to allow God to work in your soul? Like, what are you prepared to do? Right now, we're wearing our Region shirts, as Ramey explained earlier, and we're launching new classes next week. I'm not going to give you a pitch, but can I just challenge you with this? That if you say that you want to deal seriously with sin in your life, can I challenge you to make a serious commitment to your own spiritual health by signing up for Region? And if you don't want to do that for whatever reason, that's fine. It may not be the right season for you. I get that. But what you cannot say is you want to take your sin seriously and then do nothing. Like, what you don't get to say is, God, I want to step into this new life that you've created for me. I want to be free from sin and then change nothing about your life. What are you prepared to do? And how you answer that question, that will shape everything about your future. Because the distance that you're willing to go, how far you're willing to go to rid your life of sin, to be free from sin, understand that is the outer boundary of your freedom, because sin is a prison. We're celebrating Memorial Day. We're remembering those men and women who gave their lives for our freedoms. And for centuries, in the development of Western civilization, freedom was understood in a very particular way, that freedom is freedom to pursue virtue. It was freedom to become the best versions of ourselves, free to become better human beings. That's how it was understood. But more recently, it has been reduced to freedom from restriction, freedom from anyone or anything that would limit our expression of our own authentic selves. But what you may find surprising is that God is for your freedom. God is for your self-expression. What we've lost sight of is that who you are, the fullest expression of you, is always connected to who God created you to be, because you didn't create yourself. Right? You are not your own idea. You didn't design yourself out of your imagination. God made you. You are a piece of art by a master craftsman who knows every intricate detail of you, all of your idiosyncrasies, everything that uniquely makes you, you. You are his idea. And so you are a work of art, but you're also a work in progress. A number of years ago, we were in DC, and we were taking the kids around. I think it was just the two boys at the time, and the two older boys. And so we were going around seeing the Capitol and seeing Jefferson Memorial and all the fun touristy stuff. But the Washington Monument was under scaffolding. You couldn't even see it. There was just scaffolding, and there was something, blur behind it. And the reason was because over the years, the monument, and you couldn't really see this, but there had been hurricanes and an earthquake. And even from a fairly close-up distance, what you couldn't see is that there were hundreds of cracks and places where the rocks had come free and had fallen. Because over time, it had begun to shift and to change, and it needed to be restored. And so they had the scaffolding up, and they were working on it. It's been I don't know how long, and I don't know how many millions of dollars to restore the Washington Monument to its full glory. See, this is the work that God wants to do inside of each of us. That he created you as a beautiful work of art, and he wants to restore that beauty within you to its fullness. And so the real question is, how far are you willing to allow God to change you? Like, how far are you willing to go to give God access to your heart, to let him deal with parts of yourself that you don't even want to admit are true? How far are you willing to let God begin to shape you and to mold you, even when it hurts, even when it's painful? How far are you willing to go to enjoy the freedom that he can give you? And see, the reality is that oftentimes we are the ceiling of what God can do with us. That the only person who can prevent God from changing you is you. Because love always has to be an expression out of freedom, right? You can't force someone to love you. God wants to love you. He wants to change you with his love. He can't make you to force him back, otherwise it's not love anymore. And so he is inviting us into this relationship, a free relationship where we allow him to love us as we love him. But what's so interesting is that so often we want freedom from the very things that we need. We want freedom from God because we're afraid of what he might do to us. We want freedom from restraint. We want freedom from reality even. We want freedom from commitment. We want freedom from anything that feels like it binds us in and doesn't allow us to do everything that we want to do without realizing that we were actually created in such a way that it's within those constraints, if you will, that God does his deepest work. It's like coal under pressure over decades, centuries, that becomes a diamond. And this is why God cares so much about marriage. Because can I just tell you that marriage is one of God's favorite pressure cookers for developing character within you, isn't it? Some of you are married are like, Yeah, I mean, this is one of God's most powerful tools in how he changes us. And Paul even says this in Ephesians 5. When he describes marriage, that marriage is designed as a way to bring Jesus to life in us in a more full way as we love one another unconditionally. But see, without that commitment, then we're willing to go and do whatever we want to do. Right? But see, this is why Jesus is so against divorce. Because if we bail on that commitment, if one of you bails, if one of you leaves, then you both lose. And so what does Jesus say in verse 31? It has been said, anyone who divorces his wife must give her a certificate of divorce. Remember what I said about how all of these laws were biased towards men. They were living in a patriarchal society. And so for the men, they could divorce their wives, and without a male head over her, right? Male protection. A woman had virtually no legal protections whatsoever. And so she either needed to still be in the family of her father or she needed to be married. And so the certificate of divorce was to protect women so that husbands couldn't say, you're out. And then they can't find a husband, or people are like, wait, you're still married and we can't get remarried or whatever. So they had to give a certificate of divorce so that the woman could say, see, I was divorced legally and now I'm allowed legally to remarry. There's a protection for her. And so in verse 32, he says, but I tell you that anyone who divorces his wife except for marital unfaithfulness causes her to become an adulteress, and anyone who marries the divorced woman commits adultery. Now, there's all kinds of layers to what's being discussed here behind the scenes, legalities and theological debates that are all underneath the surface that we can't really see thousands of years removed. But within Judaism, like I said, there are all sorts of debates around what actually constituted adultery and who was responsible. And so what Jesus is doing here is he is actually leveling the playing field between the opposite sexes, between men and women. Before it was all favored for the men, but now he's leveling it to say that when it comes to physical intimacy, when it comes to cheating on a spouse, men can't divorce his wife and come away unscathed. He's holding them both responsible. What I want you to see is that Jesus, if you get nothing else out of this, I want you to see that Jesus takes marriage more seriously than pretty much anyone ever has. In Jesus' world, even the Jews had found ways of interpreting the law so that husbands could divorce their wives for pretty much any reason they could come up with. You burn the toast, you're gone. If you found a woman who was more attractive than your wife, well, that's your wife's problem for not being more attractive, so you can get rid of her too. And not much has changed. Right? These days, you don't have to have a good reason to break your vows. You don't have to have a good reason to go back on the promises that you made before God and before others. If you feel bored, you just don't feel that spark anymore, you find somebody else who's a little bit better, a little more fun, makes your heart beat a little faster, like whatever it is, you can either cheat on your spouse because, hey, who's getting in the way of your happiness, or you can walk away altogether. But of course, nobody wants to think of themselves like that, do we? You know, we don't want to be that dishonest person, that person who's kind of a scumbag. We don't want to be the person who breaks their vows, an oath breaker. And so what we look for are ways to make promises and then find reasons to break them that we can justify to ourselves. And this is what was happening in Jesus' day, that there was a sophisticated method, if you will, of making promises, making oaths that then allowed you to break them without technically breaking them. It was like a really fancy way of making a promise while you cross your fingers and put it behind your back. I promise you, but, oh, I forgot to tell you there's a loophole over here. And so again, Jesus, he raises the bar. He calls them out. Verse 33, again, you have heard that it was said to the people long ago, do not break your oath, but keep the oaths you have made to the Lord. But I tell you, do not swear at all, either by heaven, for it is God's throne, or by the earth, for it is his footstool, or by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great king. And do not swear by your head, for you cannot make even one hair white or black, or in my case, make it grow. Now, what he's referring to here, these are all ways that they were making oaths, making promises, making vows that would then give them a way out. There was an exit strategy. There was a loophole. But Jesus, he's closing them. Because in verse 37, he says, simply let your yes be yes and your no, no. Anything beyond this comes from the evil one. You ever had that friend who was constantly swearing to you that what they said was true? I swear to you, I swear to you, I swear to you, it's true, it's true, it's true. Can I tell you, if that's you, that's because you have a reputation that precedes you. It's because you know that people don't trust you. It's because you have either lied or you have broken what you've said, you've some way twisted the truth enough times that people have no reason to believe you. And so you are adding all of this buttress to what you say. You can't just say this happened because people will be like, I'm not sure about that. And Jesus says, don't be that person. Don't be like that. Let your yes be yes. Let your no be no. We should be people of integrity, people who say what we mean and do what we say. And this goes well beyond our marriage vows, right? This is not just marriage vows. This is in every relationship. But I think that Jesus starts in this context as he talks about marriage and faithfulness because it was within a marriage that this distrust among human people first became reality. You think back in Genesis 3, as God comes to Adam and says, Adam, why did you eat of the fruit that I told you not to eat of? And Adam, in a moment of great courage and heroism and responsibility, owning up to his own failure, said, that woman, she did it. And he even blames God. God, that woman you gave me. Like, he doesn't even refer to her as his wife. This woman he's supposed to cherish and protect and take care of and all the rest, honor. He says, that woman. Guys, if you were in a place where you refer to your wife as that woman, can I just tell you, you're in a very bad place indeed, okay? Like, good things are not headed your way. Don't do that. See, Adam, he betrayed her, right? He threw her all the way under the bus. And in that moment, whatever confidence or trust that Eve had in Adam was lost. I mean, this is the guy she's attached to. This is the guy who's supposed to watch out for her. This is the guy they're supposed to be in this thing together. And he says, yes, she did it. She did it. And that became the pattern for human relationships. And we are reaping the fruit of that moment. We turned on one another, and this has become so much of what is broken within society, within our marriages, within our friendships. Why we can't trust other people is because we can't trust anybody. We believe the distrust, and we have sown the distrust, and now we are feeding the distrust. And so Jesus, he starts with marriage in this whole context because marriage is the most fundamental relationship of any civilization. Because trust is so vital. Trust is so vital. To be a trustworthy person, to be someone others can count on, who honors their commitments, that is absolutely fundamental. It is the basis of every relationship, not just our marriages, but every relationship that you will ever have in your life. So what kind of person are you? A few days ago, I was driving around here, and there's a four-way stop. You guys have seen it. It's a death trap. Because there are so few people who evidently know how to navigate four-way stops. I don't know why that is. It doesn't seem that complicated, but I think people get in a hurry. But this one driver, we pulled up, there was pretty long lines all the way around, and this one driver pulls up, and they had no idea what to do, bless her heart. And she couldn't decide what to do, right? Go, not go. So you either need to stop or you need to go. All right, it's got to be one or the other. And instead, she just kind of creeped. And you could tell, I think she was like, you could see her head looking around like, do I go, do I not? And we're all just sitting there stopped. And I can see the other drivers, we're all like, just either stop so we know we can go or go. It's one or the other. In my head, I'm like, commit already. Go or stop. I don't even care. Just pick one. And I thought, this is so true of where we are, right? As a society, like we don't want to commit to anything because we don't trust anyone. And we don't trust other people. I'm not going to commit to you. I'm not going to commit to anything that you're doing or a part of. I don't want to commit to other people because I don't trust them. I'm not sure what to do. And so we hedge our bets. And we make sure that we're safe. We only look out for ourselves. And that keeps us from ever making the commitments that we need to make and then honoring them. Right? See, there are some of you who commitment, the idea of commitment, it sounds like a kind of death. Like it's gotten to that point. This is why there are so many young people now. By the way, I'm dating myself here, but so many young people who are not getting married but want to live together instead because they don't want to make the commitment. It's scary. Can you really trust that other person? Or what if you want out? What if you find somebody better? What if you get bored? What if you feel like you've made a mistake somewhere along the line? And so we leave ourselves exit strategies. And see, I've heard the whole line about who needs a certificate of marriage, who needs a ceremony, if you just love one another. Can I tell you, you're just trying to make sure you've got a way out. Just be honest about it. And what happens is we are so concerned with protecting ourselves because we don't trust anybody else, then we're going to make sure we always have a way out. And we test the water to make sure that we like it before we ever wade in, and we want to protect ourselves at all costs. And it's not just with marriage, right? I mean, there's some of us, we don't even want to commit to what we're going to eat for dinner at night. Like, it's just become a way of life. Like, there's some of you, you don't want to say yes or no to anything. You only say maybe all the time because you don't want to be boxed in. You don't want to be trapped with whatever your decision is. What if something better comes along? But the reality is that unless you commit to something, your life will never amount to anything. It's only people who commit who make a difference. If you don't commit to something, that as soon as the going gets tough, you'll bail. You'll find a reason to leave. You'll find a reason to opt out. You'll go back on whatever you said. And you'll actually miss the blessing that is contained within the constraint, within the commitment. Because it's when the pressure is on and it'd be easier to walk away, that's when you grow. That's when God changes your character. I've been watching a lot of baseball lately. We got 3 kids playing baseball and 1 playing softball. When a batter steps into that box and the pitch is coming, they have to make a decision in a split second, but it is a commitment. You either swing or you don't swing. But that's the only way to make a positive impact on the game. A half swing is never gonna work, right? You ever see a kid half swing over a baseball like this high? It's like, no, you should have swung, but if you're gonna swing, swing, like one or the other, commit. And the games that we play we don't want to be seen as untrustworthy. We don't want to be seen as lacking integrity, so it's better just not to commit to anything. Can I tell you that if you are one of those people, you're just afraid to commit, you never commit, you just want to hang out on the fringes all the time, that doesn't make you trustworthy, it just makes you irrelevant. Right before Carrie and I got engaged, we had this conversation. And she remembers it much more vividly than I do, which is how it always works. And evidently, I was a little too transparent in what I was saying. And so I was talking about how, as I make decisions, that I like to keep all of my options open. And she took that to mean that I was afraid of commitment. What she didn't realize is I actually already had the ring. I was just explaining to her my process. But she thought I was saying, I'm leaving all my options open. And she was like, he's never going to propose. I was like, why didn't you break up with me? She was like, I just hadn't gotten around to it yet. And so a few weeks later, I proposed, and there you go. But I get wanting to leave your options open. And so hear me, we have to be wise about the commitments we make. We need to be discerning. We don't need to rush into the commitments that we make. Because we want our yes to be yes. We want our no to some of those things that we could do to be no. We want to be people of our word, people who say what we mean and do what we say. We want to be people with integrity. And so we don't rush into commitments lightly. But can I tell you that when you make that commitment, a commitment to make someone else's life better, and that's really what we're talking about. You know, the most important commitments we make are always about someone else. It's about serving them, committing to their good. And that's what marriage is. Marriage is when you commit to someone else for life for their sake. And they do the same. And when you do that, and you begin to commit to other people in your life, to your friendships, to your marriages, your spouse, within your business, your clients, the people you work with, your boss, to your church, to your small group, when you begin to make those commitments, can I tell you, you will be amazed. You'll wonder why you haven't been doing this all along. Because when you try to live your life only committed to you, it is empty and it is exhausting. Because you have to constantly be reevaluating whether you're getting what you want out of every relationship. Every few days, you have to go, you know what? Do I really like that church? Maybe there's a better one. Do I really like this small group? Maybe there's a better one. Do I really like my spouse? Maybe there's a better one. Do I really like this friendship? Maybe I'm not really getting everything out of it that I wish I could. And you will wear yourself out. And it will make you a self-absorbed person who is of no benefit to anyone else or even you. But if you want to change the culture of your life, and make it a culture of trust, you don't have to wait for other trustworthy people. You can become that trustworthy person. You can commit to serve others, commit to improve their lives, commit to be by their side no matter what. And And you can commit to being in the midst of it even when the pressure's on and everything gets hard, because everything that's worthwhile is hard. Marriage is hard. Parenting is hard. Friendships are hard. Relationships are hard. Making a difference is hard. But you can be the one person who can be counted on. There might not be anyone else in your life, but if you are the one person who can be counted on, if you take that step of courage to be the one trustworthy person, you will be amazed at the difference you can make in a world that is absolutely certain that everyone will let them down. One of my favorite passages, I love this moment in 2 Corinthians. The Apostle Paul, he says this, "But as surely as God is faithful, our message to you is not yes and no. For the Son of God, Jesus Christ, who was preached among you, was not yes and no, but in him it has always been yes. For no matter how many promises God has made, they are yes in Christ. And so through him, the Amen is spoken by us to the glory of God." And Jesus is the most trustworthy person who ever lived. And he refused to give up on his commitment to save humanity, to save you, to save me. Even though we let him down, we shook our fist at him and wished that he was dead, even though we gave him every excuse that he could have walked away. Instead, he said, "No, I'm not leaving." And he stayed true to his commitment to us, even though it cost him his life. I know there are some of you who are wondering how you can be that kind of person in your life. How can you be a person that others can be counted on when you don't feel like you can count on anyone else? When you feel like everybody else around you is only out for themselves, no one's looking out for you, but there is. Jesus is looking out for you. The most powerful, most loving, the most gracious, the most generous person in all of the universe is looking out for you. You don't need an escape route. You don't need an exit strategy. You don't have to avoid commitment. You don't have to be afraid. Because all of God's promises to love you and to protect you and to keep you, all of those find their affirmation in Jesus, that because of Jesus, we know that his promises have never and will never change. And when you trust Jesus like that, it changes everything. You don't need a financial security company to give you confidence so you can sleep at night. When you know that Jesus is the one looking out for you, you can sleep well. When you know that Jesus is the one looking out for you, you can know and you can have the confidence and the security you need to be that person to other people because you know that he's got you. He's got you. And if you're here this morning and you've never trusted Jesus that way, I want you to know that he's the security you're looking for. Other people are going to let you down. Companies will let you down. You can hire whoever you want, pay whatever monthly fee you want. You'll never know for sure that they will not let you down. But Jesus, he has already gone as far as he could possibly go, all the way to the point of death, to let you know that he's got you. And if you have never trusted Jesus with your life, I want you just to invite you this morning that you can take that step of faith. You can give your life to him and you can know the security of him, his love for you. Would you all just bow your heads with me? Let's pray as we close. Excuse me. Jesus, if there's anyone here right now who has never given their life to you and trusted you that way, I pray that right now they would know that you are the one they've been looking for and searching for. We can have wonderful relationships in our lives and still be surprised at how fragile they can be. There can be great ways that we find security and we try to protect ourselves, and some of those can be useful, but all of it is fleeting. And none of us will last beyond a few years. But you are eternal. You are forever. So if there's anyone here right now who's never trusted you with their life, I pray that right now they would do so. And if that's you, right now I want you to know that you can simply say to Jesus, I give you my life. I give you my life. Jesus, I trust you with my life, and he will come in to your life. He will give you his life, and he will make you new. He's not selling you anything. He's here to give you everything. And if that's you, I want to invite you afterwards just to come and find me. Find somebody who is wearing a Regen shirt. I would love to have that conversation with you because it's not a journey to be walked on by yourself. So come and talk to us. Father, thank you that your commitment to us has never failed. Thank you that your promise to us are always yes in Jesus. Help us to be people of integrity. Give us the courage to commit to those things that matter most and to honor those commitments. Help us to be people of our word, not our convenience. Help us to look like you as we go into the world that's so distrustful, and to be people who are worthy of trust. It's in your name that we pray. Amen.